Hey guys, it's Surya from Inspiration Fine Arts Academy, and today I'm going to be talking about photography for week 2. And I know I said I was going to talk about color last week, but I decided on talking about something else which I personally think is more important, and it's gear, right? And specifically what I personally feel like you need. Obviously, the one thing you need is the camera. And for cameras, there's camera bodies, there's two ways to go. There's digital or film. I personally shoot with film for photos. I just like the way it looks, and I also feel like having manual controls and just dials and knobs. It just personally makes me like shooting it more, and then getting the stuff developed. It's just more fun for me, and it just encourages me to go and take more photos. But digital, I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of more automatic. Like there's not much thought, or it doesn't feel like more if your soul is put into it, if that makes sense. But anyways, obviously for digital cameras, if you looked it up, the way to go are Sony a6000, I think Nikon D3500, I'm not sure about Nikon, but Canon M50. Those three are pretty much it. But other people know digital cameras way better than me, so look it up first, watch reviews, then buy it. But for film cameras, this isn't a Canon A1, but this is a Canon F1. But the Canon A1 is personally the best beginner film camera in my opinion. Olympus OM1, OM2, OM2 Spot, whatever. Those are also really good. Yeah, that's pretty much all I can recommend. Don't get a rangefinder for your first camera. And rangefinders are the super expensive German-made ones, like Leica or Voigtlander, which is Japan technically. But they have a little patch here, and you focus on them through here instead of having a mirror in the actual camera. And so yeah. That's as far as film cameras. And the first lens you really need to get is definitely a 50mm, in my opinion. Or if your camera comes with a kit lens already, get a 50mm in addition to it. And when I mean 50mm, I can't speak. In 50mm, I mean comparatively to full frame, right? So the camera I'm shooting on is actually a digital, obviously, Lumix camera, and that's micro four thirds. And so a 50mm on a full frame camera on micro four thirds would actually be a 25mm. But for example, this is a full frame film camera, or 35mm full frame film camera, and I can just shoot with a normal 50mm on this. So just keep that into mind. If you go to B&H and Adorama and look up the lens you want to get, look at the full frame specification or full frame length or whatever it's called. Make sure that says 50 if you want to get a 50mm lens. And another really important thing when it comes to camera bodies is cost, obviously. And film is generally a little bit more expensive than digital, although when you're first starting out, it's not as transparent as when you get into super expensive, professional camera bodies. For example, the Sony a7 III or the EOS R both cost around $2,000, and this is basically the 1970s equivalent of those cameras. This cost me about $200, and the film cost me I think $17 in total to shoot a roll, develop it, buy the roll, everything, right? And if you develop your own film, scan it, everything, it's obviously cheaper. So it takes around 9,000 film shots to get as expensive as digital, if that makes sense, right? Because film, obviously each photo you take costs a certain amount of money, but it's way cheaper to have a buy-in. But digital has a much higher buy-in cost. And on the beginner side of things, if you use a Canon A1 with a Sony a6000 for the same comparison, it only takes around 800 photos actually, where film starts to get more expensive. But another important thing to think about is, it's heavy so I'm putting it down, but film cameras tend to appreciate in price. For example, if you got a Voigtlander Bessa or a Leica, if you got a Leica M6, a couple years ago for $1,200, I think. Right now it's about $2,500 to $3,200. Similarly, if you got another rangefinder, the Voigtlander Bessa R2A or R3A, last year it was for around $1,000 again. This year it's almost last year you would have gotten it for $750. This year it's $1,200. So yeah, definitely film cameras appreciate in price, but digital cameras definitely don't. For example, I bought this camera, which is a Lumix G7. It's very beginner video cameras. Why is this one of them? I bought it for $500. Right now, it's $300, and it hasn't even been a full year yet. And I know the Sony a7 II, which is the camera before the A7 III. It came out like 5 years ago, but it's already at like almost $1,000, and it came out for like $2,200. So digital cameras definitely depreciate in price a lot more than film cameras, and also the lenses for digital cameras are more expensive. But then again, you get like autofocus, and you don't really get autofocus on film cameras, and you also get video, and you don't. So it just depends on what you want to do, and other accessories, right? You also need other things to take photos. One of them is the SD card. Make sure you get like a fast enough SD card. Don't use like a micro, what's it called? Like the micro SD cards, you know, the tiny ones that you put in like Android phones and stuff. Don't just get an adapter and stick it in your camera. It's gonna make taking photos really annoying if you shoot on digital. Reflectors. Okay, I don't have one with me right now because I lost mine. But what they are, they're giant fabric panels, right? Like, you know the stuff you put in your car, so like when the sun hits the windshield, it doesn't like get too hot in the car. Basically stuff like that, but you can reflect light. So if you have a friend helping you out, you can reflect light onto a subject. That way, like if there's just light coming from this way, I can bounce it from over here to make sure it evenly fills the subject. So those are really good, and they're also not that expensive, and relatively, right? $20 for like a lighting system, a whole lighting system. It's not that expensive. It's amazing. Get one of those if you want to do portrait photography. Literally changed my like whole view on lighting. Another thing is a cable release, especially if you have film cameras. And what a cable release does is right here, I don't know if it'll focus, I don't think it will, but right here there's a little shutter, right? And you can put the shutter, or you can put the cable release here and then have your shutter here. And so if you just have it like resting on a ledge or something, and you want to take a long exposure, you can set it all the way up to like 2 minutes, click the cable, that way you don't have to hold it, and so you don't shake the camera on accident when you're pressing the shutter. And a lot of people use that for like astrophotography, or especially if you're on film, or long exposures, or night photography. Another thing is tripods. I genuinely don't like shooting with a tripod. I don't think I've ever shot with a tripod, ever, and the photos that like came out that I really liked it, because like I like taking street photography and portrait photography, and like yeah, kind of it makes sense for portrait if you have it on a tripod and you can kind of move the camera around, but still it's definitely just easier to pick up the camera and use your own hands. But if you want to do like low light photography or like night photography or even like astrophotography, then you need to look at a tripod, especially like if you want to take photos like when it's pitch black, then you need to crank the shutter speed all the way up to like a minute and then let the photo expose itself. Okay, that's it for this week. Next week, I'm going to be talking about shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and the relationship between the three, and the exposure triangle. All right, bye.
Hi, we're your IFA co-founders. I'm Ellie.
And I'm Miriam.
And thank you so much for watching our videos.
You guys can learn more about our cause down below at our website, www.inspirationfinearts.org.
And if you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We couldn't be where we are without the support of you guys, so make sure to send in videos of the things that you've learned during classes and pictures of the art that you completed.
Everything you send in will be featured on all our social media platforms.
Thanks for supporting us, and until next time,
Go find your inspiration!